Okay, trade partners, I want to just welcome everybody out to our pull plan. If you do a pull plan with other people, you'll see that the way I do it is different. I found this to be very, very effective. I want you to know that my focus is to protect trade partners. Most contractors don't understand that you cannot beat up trade partners, bully them, force them, push them around, have them losing money, ask them to be all over hell all at once, and still make money. You cannot do that and still finish your project on time, because the project might be the most important thing financially, but that project isn't going anywhere unless the trade partners are flowing and making money. So I want you to know that these pull plans, the way I do them, are 100% focused on how do we get trade flow and make sure that everyone is taken care of. So this board right here is pre-formatted. We have sticky colors all ready to go. Over here to the left, I've got a little conditions of satisfaction section, and we're going to go over that in a second and ask, what do we need to accomplish as a part of this pull plan? We're going to go through our rules, meaning how we want to run the pull plan, or the team does. I loosely say I, but the team already has a proposed zoning strategy that we're going to discuss here in just a minute. And we have our pull plan area. And what's different from what you may have done with other contractors is that this one has different zones. The only other thing that we've started doing with Matt's expertise, Matt and Tracy, is that we have already looked at the work density of each of these areas. So HVAC, piping, the HVAC on the roof, electrical. And so we generally know where things are. And that was taken into consideration when we proposed the zoning, but we can definitely adjust that while we're here. We are going to run it forward. So that means that we are going to only ask you here in a minute, hey, what is your duration and what are your activities? Okay. And then when we go back, we're going to ask you, hey, for you to do that activity, what things do you need? So this is a pull plan where we'll go forward and then we'll run it back to confirm the sequence. The last planner system means that you all are the last people in the planning cycle, and I would say the most important. What that means is we are not screwing anybody into a schedule that they didn't agree to. We are asking you all along the way. So let's get started. Conditions of satisfaction. This is the first thing we do in a pull plan. So this outlines what are we doing. So what we're about to do is we're going to create a sequence for MEP. Well, all we're doing in this pull plan is we're going to complete the sequence for MEP for roughing. So this won't be finishes, devices, terminations, things like that, right? We are going to do one zone, but you're only going to give us durations for one zone. This is going to be fairly high level, but it needs to be detailed enough for a weekly work plan. And what we need is your best estimate for your durations for activities. And the last thing that I would probably say before I ask for feedback is please ask for what you need. These are the rules. We're going to decide on zoning first. So I'm about to ask everybody, hey, does that zoning generally work for you? Then we're going to fill out our activities and we're going to do it in a forward pass. And then we're going to run the backwards pass and we're going to focus on needs, meaning we're going to make sure that every activity has needs met. These really work well if we have one person speaking at a time. Only commit to realistic durations. Do not feel forced into durations that aren't realistic, please. And then the other thing is, please, no sandbagging. All right, first thing we're going to talk about is zoning. We actually researched the drawings and looked at the density of your work in all of these areas and ran the information through the calculator. We have a calculator that simulates how many zones would be ideal. And this is our first pass. So here's my question as I show this to you. The foundations will have gone in this direction, okay? And the structure generally in that same direction. And then when we do the exterior, to my knowledge, the exterior is going to run around the building in this direction as well. So we kind of have a common direction. So this would be our first zone, second zone, third zone, fourth zone. So trade partners, is this correct that this is the general location of our med gas and really in zone 3 and 4? Is that the way you all understand it as well?
Yes.
This is actually good for us and ties into the strategy because you all can start on zone 1 and 2 and release these to successor contractors. And once you do this, if it takes a minute for us to do the inspection and button up the drywall, this will be at the tail end of that. So hopefully that works out really well. So once you ask the interior rough-in folks to arrive, what can you expect to be done before they get there?
Steel decking is before these guys start. And
Okay,
framing, interior framing, exterior framing. Yeah, decking. So decking first, exterior framing, interior framing.
So slab on grade will be complete. Your steel decking and your exterior framing. Exterior framing, I'm not going to say that that's done. That's going to run concurrently, but you will have slab on grade complete and steel decking. What is the first thing that goes on in this sequence?
We're going to go mechanical.
Okay. Oh, we did this last time and it was really jamming. What is the general flow of the interiors? I want to ask fire sprinkler, mechanical, piping, plumbing, framing. Let's start with that right there. What is the general sequence we want to go with, Matt? And then that'll give me an anchor. Where is fire sprinkler in relation to mechanical piping and plumbing, do you think?
Fire sprinkler's up in the air right now. We're gonna go with mechanical first.
I'll put fire sprinkler here. So mechanical.
So mechanical piping, mechanicals concurrent.
So where do you want plumbing, Matt?
So that's gonna be right there, right after mechanical piping.
Okay, wonderful.
So frame's gonna be first.
Okay, we're not just doing priority walls, we're doing everything. Okay, perfect. All right, what about fire sprinkler, overhead electrical? Where do you want them?
Yeah, mechanical, plumbing, electrical. So it's just gonna flow that way.
Okay, perfect. All right, fire sprinkler.
Yep, they're gonna have to stay at the end for now.
Let's switch plumbing to dark green, and then we'll do light blue for framing. Is the framer there in the room?
No, no.
What's the duration for framing all the walls inside one area?
Well, I think they give us 10 days for the whole building.
So what's 10 divided by 4? So it's 3 days. Okay, framing. All right, so we'll go ahead and have that run out 3. And this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say to be verified. If there's a trade partner that can't be here, we're not going to shove a schedule duration down their throat. All right, the mechanical contractor, let's go. Once the framing's up, what is the next activity that you have? Let's roll.
So, okay, so curbs being on the roof, I won't worry too much because we're more interior at this point. So the curves will be set already anyway.
So I can put an activity here that says that we need to have something done.
Our roof, so not just decking, but our TPO has to be done too. So we can start our in wall before they start their overhead duct. Once our rough framing is done or halfway done, we can bring our electricians and plumbers in to do our in wall, and then we can't do our overhead mechanical until our TPO is complete.
We could start running piping.
Which that would be cool.
Piping can start running because if it gets wet,
That's okay.
it's okay.
This is just our duct that can't get wet.
It's just none of our duct can get wet.
One thing that I would like to do is let's create the ideal sequence, and then what Danny and I will do is immediately compare it to the other schedule. In fact, which activity right here is the roofing? So R2 on area A, so that's when it's happening, and then the high roof, and then we start activity 43 and 41. So mechanical starts right here, typically in each one of these areas. And so what we do is we have a problem where this tie for being substantially dried in is not done by this time. Okay, so that's a problem. Do you think we're going to start later, or do you think we will adjust the sequence to do overhead after in walls? Which one are you leaning towards?
I'd go with option A there, Van.
Adjust the sequence?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going with the assumption that we're going to start with in-wall first, and anything that needs to be, in dry conditions, we'll move as late as possible. So mechanical, knowing that information, what is your next activity?
Mechanical piping's first, plumbing and electrical,
Okay, how many days for mechanical piping?
8 days.
All right, what happens after mechanical piping?
There's going to be that overlap of plumbing happening too, right?
Plumbing.
Sorry, we're just sticking with just mechanical. We're going to do a mechanical pull first.
All we have to do here is to write down what part of the sequence it has to be done. So here's what our promise is. We're not going to schedule something and make you do something that's not right. So all we have to do in the sequence as part of the pull plan right now is just say, okay, mechanical piping can go in, framing and mechanical piping can happen, and then for you to start, whatever else you want to start, you have to have your TPO complete on roof and over any curves. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And I can also move this, somewhere back here, and it's on Matt and the rest of us to make sure that the overall schedule reflects that you need this ahead of, so not a big deal. So for your plumbing, how many days does your plumbing install take place? I'm assuming that's overhead and in wall.
That's also 8 days.
8 days. What day can this start in relation to the mechanical piping?
I would say after 4 days, I would bring them into the second week. So there you go. We'll start our in-wall about a week after mechanical piping.
All right, so let's go ahead and run that out. 8 days is TPO complete. Right here, this is our key indicating that milestone. So you tell me, based on that milestone, when does your mechanical go in?
Mechanical duct starts that day.
How many days for mechanical ducts?
So for now, 12 days.
And does this run concurrent with in-wall plumbing? Or you find, like if you have mechanical piping, does this all work together? So you have 8 days of mechanical piping right here. So you have mechanical piping. You have folks in that same zone. The in-wall plumbing is happening and duct. Do you all fit in that one zone? This is a 4,000 square foot zone. So just be thinking, can all of those fit in this day?
Well, why don't we start then the 13th? Give him 4 days to get started. That way he's moving That way we're falling back on the duct. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That way you're moving out of that area while we're coming back and starting.
Okay, so for this mechanical duct, it's important for us to distinguish mains, branch, equipment, installation. And is this all installed duct, or can I break them up into the different phases to make sure you have good flow?
It's all going to be the same, basically.
Run the branches as they run the mains.
All right, perfect. Then we have plumbing. What about electrical? How many days for the overhead electrical just for that one 4,000 square foot zone?
Go with the same thing, 8 days.
How many days for in-wall electrical 4,000 square foot zone?
7 days.
Okay, and in-wall electrical. So where do you want fire sprinkler in this system?
I think we used 8 too many times, so
We're not 8.
so they can start at the same time as the overhead duct.
All right, we can analyze this real quick. How many days will it take you to do your plumbing installation?
A week per zone.
This is plumbing insulation. Okay, so that takes 4 days. And what you're saying is that you need to be able to test the entire system unless you valve it differently.
Yes.
We would prefer to test the whole system and then come back and insulate also.
We're going to see if we can pull this all together here in just a second. All right, so we'll place these here in just a minute. Let's just make sure that we do a quick audit here. Real quick, typically you do your med gas, zone valve. It's been a while since I've actually done work. And then testing and inspection. Give me the durations for the med gas, if that's okay.
The piping to the zone valve boxes will take, the whole thing will take 5 days, and then the testing and inspection will take a day if we can get the inspector out right away, which we should be able to. 5 days for top out.
Oh, for top out from start to finish testing and everything? Real quick, do we have all of our storm drain figured into the sequence that we just went through? Is that included in the overhead plumbing, the storm drain?
No,
We would have to look at it here real quick. So is the roof pitching to downspouts, or do we have any interior drains that run overhead? That's my question.
it's gutter and rain chain.
Let's say that the testing and installation wasn't a problem. You would probably do the plumbing right after the other activities. Is that right? If you were able to do it, this is how you would do it, right?
The insulation, yes.
I'm looking at the patterns here. Here's my question. You have zone A and zone B. This sequence that we just did is just for one zone. And so if I was to copy this down for zone B, there's a couple different strategies we have, and how we do this is very, very important. If we do a 4-day stagger, that means framing would go through and have a buffer and then head to the second zone and start jamming, and then have a buffer and then go down and jam. What it would mean for the rest of you if we were on a 4-day stagger is that mechanical piping would go for a week, and then you would have to basically be in 2 zones at one time because your floors would be on a 4-day stagger. Then you would be expected to be finishing, and then 4 days later finish another zone, and then 4 days later finish another zone. The other option is, instead of a 4-day stagger, which I just want everybody to know that this is typically the stagger, the other option would be to do it on an 8-day stagger like this. And what would happen here is your framers could actually probably just go frame the whole darn thing, and they would be on their own rhythm, so not a big deal. But what would happen with the rest of you, mechanical piping, and then you would go to a different zone and then do your mechanical piping. And same thing with in-wall plumbing, you would go do your stuff and then move to another zone. So it would be definitely a finish to start. What's everybody thinking for the stagger for going to zone? Is it a 4-day stagger or an 8-day stagger?
8 days.
I'm going to check something real quick. If 31 finishes and then we go 8 days more, so 31 plus 8 is 39, plus 8 I think ends us up, if we kept doing this through all 4 zones, this would end up taking 55 days. So I just want to come down here and check the actual schedule here and see if we have 55 days in the schedule and if the overall sequence looks like it will work. So 20 right here, this is when we need to start doing our drywall. And so I want to see how many days we have going to the left. Okay, so I need 31 days to the left. The sequence that they just gave us, Matt, is actually golden. So activity number 20 here is the start of drywall. And then over here, R2 is TPO. And that's even for the high roof. That means everything's done. And what I'm saying, though, if you go to our whole plan here, this is what everybody just coordinated here, which is fairly tight, is 31 days. What I'm telling you is that with the 31 days, and you take 31 days back, this is when you would have to start interior framing. You can do a couple of things here. You can wait until the roofing is done to start so that people don't have to do that out of sequence stuff and start it later. And if I gave away any of our leverage, or you can start people earlier and gain buffers at the end of the sequence, or you can release a little bit of the tension in the sequence and have a little bit more room to breathe. The 31 days at an 8-day stagger 100% fits inside the overall schedule and still completes the ending. That's a real good sign. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yeah, but that's starting the interior framing when? Is there, can you zoom in or out or down?
I'm saying that you could start the interior framing after you're substantially dried in. You could start it as late as, which I'm not saying I definitely recommend, but you could start it as late as February 22nd and still make it. Now, what I would probably do is probably get the roofing done in areas 1, 2, 3 and start framing. And so that means you would start on February 12th. And then while the roofers are still on the high roof, get your sequences started. And that would give you probably 6-7 days of buffer at the end. So
I'll start my framing when steel deck is done on A, B, and C. So I'm actually going to be at the end of January 29th is when we're going to start our exterior framing.
okay, well, the bottom line here, team, is that if this fits in the overall schedule and it's looking really good. So overhead electrical, I need each contractor, when I call your name, to tell me what are 2 things you definitely gotta have for you to do your job. This is where you ask for what you need. So for overhead electrical,
It's after the framing's done.
okay, so framing complete, okay.
The mechanical guy needs to be through with his big duct work, and the plumber with his big stuff.
And when we do this, we need to make sure that you have everything. So framing complete, that is a yes. So I'll just mark a yes here at the beginning. Mechanical complete, mechanical contractor, can you, at the end of your 10 days, you're going to be out of his way? Yeah.
Should be us.
Yes.
And then plumbing complete, that's correct. At the end of your electrical, do you have an inspection or is that just a part of your yours?
That's just conduit rough in.
All right, 10-4. Mechanical duct, you've got 12 days. Give me at least 2 needs.
Dried in.
Your TPO needs to be done.
We need height layouts for everybody as well.
Okay, so TPO needs to run over here, so I did that, so that's a yes. So one of the things that you'll have to do is BIM coordination complete will have to be a predecessor over here. Okay, totally fine. That's a yes. All right, that's mechanical duct. Plumbing testing, what do you need in order for you to be able to do your plumbing testing?
We need the same thing that electrical needs. We need the framing done and we need HVAC out of the way.
If you need the duct guy out of the way, just remember duct goes all the way over there, and so if you need that done, then that's definitely a problem.
We'll work with them. We'll work side by side with them.
Okay, all right. So I would say entire in-wall complete. In-wall plumbing, what are the 2 things you need just
Framing.
to do the okay, framing, anything else? Framing you will have done, so that's done. Okay, we're almost done here with this portion of it. Okay, mechanical piping testing, what are the 2 things you need?
Roof dried in, obviously.
And then mechanical piping testing, what else? Mechanical piping install, right?
Your
Okay.
pipe get duct pipe.
Okay, we got 2 more in-wall electrical. What do you need in order for you to do your in-wall electrical?
Only if I'm in the same cell as the plumber would I need anything. Otherwise, I'm good. As soon as it's free.
Okay, framing complete. And then you would just need space. Plumber, can you commit to working nicely with the electrician in wall?
We love this guy.
Last one, mechanical piping. What do you need?
You need steel decking.
Okay, decking. What happens when you go forward, you're creating a sequence. Typically, when we run it back, if it wasn't well coordinated the first time, we usually find sticky. When we do the need, basically this is us checking to make sure that you have everything you need. If you do a full plan, you can either do it backwards to start and then run it forward, or you can run it forward and go backwards. The framer has its own pace. The rest of the job has its own pace. If you all want to get all 4 areas done and ready to go, and then just test all of the plumbing all at once, I think it's that one, mechanical piping, and test all the plumbing all at once, that's what it would look like on the schedule. You all are telling me that's your preference. My question is testing and installation of plumbing and testing and installation of mechanical piping a total of 6 days for the entire building? Or is it longer than that?
It's definitely gonna take longer.
For insulation.
Okay, so quite a bit. What you all are telling me is if you have 4 days of installation, it's probably something like this, where it looks something like this. Framing has its own pace, the rest of the job has its own pace, and then this is the pace at which you would insulate. Does that look right? 4 days per section to insulate?
Yes.
So the only thing that I want to check, let's look at the overall schedule again. Drywall starts on, that would actually work. This actually works, guys. So we would have to do this right here. You would have to be done with your installation by day number 31. And then what Danny's going to do is put a diamond here that says that's when drywall starts. And then the other thing that I want to check is that you want to have all mechanical piping installed before you do the testing. What you could do, guys, is you could do mechanical piping for 2 zones and just valve it off and do your testing halfway through. And then you would be able to do your mechanical piping in your 4th zone. So you would basically have to split it up into 2 areas. Let's look at the actual plumbing install. Same thing with plumbing. You could get done with 2 zones and then you could do your insulation. And then at the end of your plumbing, right here. So here's what I'm saying, guys. When it comes to your testing, what the schedule is showing is that you're going to have to test every 2 zones to meet this schedule. So if you have overhead and mechanical piping and plumbing, or hydraulic piping, right, you're going to have to valve it off zone AB test to kick off drywall, and then do this with CD to kick off drywall. Is that okay with you all, or is that a deal breaker?
We can do it.
You can do it? Okay, perfect. If we do it that way, then that fits in the schedule. The only thing that we might need to do here to better set up your schedule is that I think your insulation is going to have to move back. In order for you to be properly set up, your installation here would have to be exactly right there. So from a flow perspective, going from zone to zone to zone, the framer every 3 days hit into different areas. And Danny, I want you to make sure that the framing will be released from the structure and the decking in order to maintain that flow. Can you make that note? Okay, what it means for the rest of you is you can come do your mechanical piping 8 days and then just go into your second area. For in-wall plumbing, that means you can go and then you flow right into your second area. For in-wall electrical, it means that you're going to go for 7 days, have 1 day of buffer, and then go to your second area. For fire sprinkler, if they don't go first, then they're either going to have to keep your rhythm and be here for 3 days, then have a break, then be here for 3 days, or they're going to have to come in all at once later. But we can simulate that. And then for your overhead electrical, you will go 8 days and then 8 days. So it looks like your 8-day rhythm worked out. The only other thing that you'll have is you will start your mechanical testing after you're done in your first 2 zones on day 22. You will start your plumbing testing after both zones are done and installed on day 26. And then that will flow nicely down here. What'll happen is when you go from zone 2 to zone 3, there will be 2 days of gap if that's okay. And if that works, then you'll be able to do your testing and your testing on zones 3 and 4. And the same thing with plumbing, you do your plumbing and then you have 2 days of buffer before you do zones 3 and 4. And then you basically flow and you flow. And then let's pull in med gas. This is just a total of 5 days. Looking at the overall schedule here, you're going to want to start your framing right here for zone number 3. So we've got to fit med gas before that for these 2 zones. We just need to find a place to put med gas in here somewhere before this milestone. Or are you going to try and do that on the weekends as you go? Because actually you could be doing, as long as overhead and electrical is fine, you could literally...
Where the framers finishing on zone C, that's when we're going to be dropping the med gas.
Who came up with that? We need to pay them more money.
Plumber.
Holy shit. That's a damn good idea, because what that means is for these 2 areas, as long as they're at the right area and they're not blocking ducts and stuff, the framing will be done ahead. Then you got med gas both zones, as long as they have the right hangers, and then they're in before everybody else. That's a freaking brilliant idea.
We'll work that with our mechanical guys too at the same time to make sure that does in fact work too, coordination wise.
Hey, we're closing this out, team. This is all going to be looped into the schedule. But what we found is framing's on a 3-day stagger as long as that's confirmed. All we got to do is make sure that the structure will be out ahead of them and that will work. If that's the case, then we have 6 days of med gas in before the interiors, because everybody else is on an 8-day stagger from zone to zone to zone. And we also got it to where you can do your testing and installation every 2 zones. You basically can do your testing all at once and your installation every 2 zones. So you'll basically have to valve it off halfway through the building. And that fits within the overall production schedule to have drywall in each area start right on time for the schedule. And we should have a pretty good sequence. And so obviously these can be modified a little bit in the weekly work plan, but I'll be damned if we didn't get a really good sequence. We're only 41 minutes behind schedule. So Matt, I feel good. We got the information we need. Everybody's gonna make money. We got flow. I'm feeling pretty happy here, boss.
I agree.
This will go into the master schedule. It will automatically filter and show up in your look aheads and in your weekly work plans to be adjusted on the day by day. I promise you that no matter what happens, nobody's going to cut your durations. We have ways to accelerate without ever cutting durations. And I appreciate everybody being a part of this full plan. So thank you all for being with us and have a great day.
You too.